Maybe you're starting to explore a career as an appraiser and want to know if now is the right time to get started. Or you're measuring your career span in decades and want to find out more about the latest apps, technology, and resources that can make your life and work a bit easier. Get the answers and insight you need with Beyond the Numbers, a podcast from McKissock Learning. I'm Julie Mollendorp-Floyd, course and curriculum developer and instructor here at McKissock. Join me and an expert guest each week as we dive into the topics that matter most to appraisers, from industry and education news to marketing and other insights to help you run your business more effectively. If you'd like to stay at the forefront of appraisal news, boost your career, or just learn more about the profession, subscribe to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hope to see you there soon. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal. I'm your host, Julie Mollendorp-Floyd, a certified general appraiser in Missouri and Kansas, and a course and curriculum developer and instructor here at McKissock. Today, our guest is our resident commercial genius, Rich Correll. He's the principal at Correll Commercial Real Estate Services, a firm which provides appraisal and consulting solutions for commercial properties for financing, litigation, and estate reporting. Today, as part 3 of our Focus on Commercial series, our topic is what's happening with the retail market. Now, Rich, I know I rarely shop in a store. I'm the queen of online shopping. If I can't get it from Amazon, I question whether or not I actually need it. So how does that compare to the general population? What's happening with our retail stores?
Well, you and I are in the same boat. I prefer to go online for everything. And e-commerce continues to be a giant force in retail sales. However, there is more to the story. And I think before we get into that, we should talk about what is our retail market in the U.S.
Yeah.
First, it's 12 billion square feet of retail.
Billion.
So clearly you and I aren't the only market participants, since that's a lot. The categories include the freestanding, big box retail. We all know those in the home category at Lowe's and Home Depot.
Sure.
Groceries such as Meijer and, of course, Walmart. General retail is a bunch of everything else. It can include a freestanding mattress store, various freestanding type retail. Power centers are where you have the multi-big boxes in a row with like a Dick's Sporting Goods next to an Office Depot, Office Max type store. Strip centers are your small convenience for tenant where you have a Starbucks, maybe a shoe store, a Subway. That's your strip centers. And neighborhood centers would have your grocery anchor like Kroger or other grocery anchor, and what we call the B shops or small shop space. Regional malls, outlet malls, everybody's familiar with those. The story in retail, so pandemic, how did that impact our retail landscape? We've talked about office in this vein. We've talked about industrial in this vein.
Sure.
I would think that retail was more impacted than it actually was. It is true that in the category of, if you want to call restaurants retail, we saw closures and failures. Those entities, in my mind, were at the precipice anyway. And the pandemic was just a push over the ledge. They couldn't sustain themselves. They couldn't pivot. And they were already on the verge of done, and they were just hanging on. So we've seen that with some chains locally and nationally. Ruby Tuesdays comes to mind.
Sure.
But others in the class, speaking of restaurants, they pivoted quite well. Culver's and Chick-fil-A, I think that they did more business. And they've continued with those themes post-pandemic. And the latest
and
Chick-fil-A
pivoting
concept.
to the carry-out mindset and the delivery services, the Door Dashes. Yeah, I've seen that quite a bit. And they've really designated space in their locations to handle that change in business.
Yep. The latest Chick-fil-A concept is a no dining room option. It is purely a pickup and delivery store.
Okay.
So they're testing.
Well, the way
that
they
theme
run
even
their
further.
drive-through is beyond belief.
It
So
really is.
If anyone can do it, it would be them.
Culver's does pretty good with that too.
They sure do.
So that's restaurants, but in the general retail landscape, there was some suffering. But again, the bounce back has been really good. And the fact is, like office space, the Class A properties in retail malls are actually thriving.
Okay.
The demand is high, while consumer spending is just in a moderate mode for 24, with moderate growth after there wasn't so much a spike in the pandemic. It's just there was a tremendous amount of, grocery delivery, food delivery, goods delivery, but it was still spending. But it wasn't a spike in spending. It was the same spending. It just oriented it differently. Instead of going to pick stuff up or shop for it, they were ordering it different ways. And I think that landscape is remaining still here, as we know, as we see. You can still go to places and have curbside delivery.
Right.
I just ordered a door from Lowe's and they brought it out. It was curbside. They already have those signs where I'm in space number 5, call this number. So the stuff that occurred because of the pandemic, I think in a lot of ways has changed as they've morphed their businesses to serve people still in that way.
Sure.
It's a convenience thing versus a virus thing.
If someone had told me 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, that my 79-year-old father would be able to order his groceries online and maneuver to go pick them up, I would have told you were crazy. And he's doing it. He's doing it regularly. Does it vary by location? Or I would think more rural folks would prefer to shop online just because of the distance to stores. But my research didn't prove that true, that it seemed like in the rural markets, they were more likely to physically go to shopping.
I mean, from what we've seen, the rural market, obviously they have deliveries, but there's a culture, at least around here, where these rural market residents will actually go to town. There's a go to town culture.
Going to town, sure.
Right. Whereas I feel like suburban is a convenience culture, and urban is probably a combination. If you can go down the street and get something, you're going to do that. But I think the urban culture is very delivery centric as well, with the services you mentioned, Grubhub. But the interesting thing, and I'm not sure how to navigate this as an appraiser, is while the big firms are talking about the positive growth, which is occurring now and ahead,
right?
I'm reading between the lines on this. They're saying a lot is happening with quick service restaurants, which they call QSRs, and that the most of retail growth is in F&B, food and beverage. And we sort of see this around us, right? You probably notice this even where you live. You see these new units going up, which is a new quick service restaurant. We had a Cane's near us just go up. Right. And then you see the food and beverage going into other, vacated spaces in the strip center, in the neighborhood center, in the mall. I think that has a mixed message. And the majority of growth, they're saying, over 65%, is occurring in the sub 2,500 square foot category.
Interesting.
Which to me is not necessarily good. Like, I don't know. I think there's a broader story here. I think retail with e-commerce, which is a continuing trend, is starting to reshape what retail looks like. I don't know that they would say that the big retail players, because plenty is going on and there's always places to drive down the street to go to, whether it's fitness or food or, burgers, it's all there and it's busy. But I do feel like the stats are saying there's not really big neighborhood centers being built. even though that's the hottest investment class. And maybe it's because there's not a big amount of supply coming in.
True.
The margins in grocery are very slim. We've had more than one failure in our market of groceries that have stayed vacant. And one was converted now to another grocery after being vacant for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So this long-term vacancy, even though the B shops are still occupied, in kind of a, missing tooth being the grocery anchor for
Missing
3
that
years
anchor.
being vacant, right? So I wouldn't say retail is completely healthy. The Class C malls are under big problems, as you can imagine.
I was going to ask that question. What's happening to our malls? Are we just bulldozing them? What are we doing with them?
There's been conversions. All the Macy's space is, being considered in a variety of conversions in various markets. It's actually the Macy's vacancy, which is an anchor in these older malls.
Right.
It's actually presenting opportunities, which I find sort of cool. This mall in Atlanta, they put in an aquarium and a food hall, co-working space, and a health and wellness center. Yeah. So in Orange County, the Brea Mall, they made it a mixed-use property with apartments, a luxury fitness and retail dining, and a 1-acre green space. So I love hearing these regrowth stories in dinosaur real estate, right? Like what I don't want to hear is Macy's is now a vertical self-storage project. That's what I don't want to hear.
I've seen the phenomenon of flipping the mall inside out. It seems that we don't really want to go inside and walk around in a mall as I've done for many, many years. But now that trend is we have a store we want to go to. We want to go in, do our shopping, and get out. Yeah. So now these malls have turned these stores so they do have that predominantly outside entrance. What's your experience with that?
Well, we have Simon anchored in our city, which is one of the biggest mall owners in the country. The Lifestyle Center, which is the outdoor mall, is the theme. But I would say those haven't necessarily been great performers, but also they've been okay. The best located Class A malls are the highest performers as we speak right now. And those are going to be in signature market areas with a high spending consumer base. And the Class C stuff is doing worse and worse. So it's kind of paralleling The Office again. The best stuff, the newest stuff is meeting expectations and capturing a high fair share of demand. And the older stuff that's obsolete or not attracting the best stores or tenants is going down. But the Lifestyle Center is active.
With that conversion potential, can they make an old mall functional to new needs? Can they put in that owner occupant or the tenant component? Is that even feasible?
It's tough. I mean, it gets back to most of this stuff that's changing. It's feasible sometimes. The best ones are convertible. There's enough demand. There's enough that you can create in a location that will work. Our outdoor Lifestyle Center has a giant co-working tenant, and that's working. That seems to be very busy, but it's in a good demographic area. There's a lot of mixed uses around it. There's a lot of street amenities to support it. But if you're you talked about St. Louis at one point, and I did a deal in St. Louis, and it was a Class C mall. There was just no demographic support to prop it up or convert it. It was basically a shutdown. That one wasn't going to work. But some of these can work, and I mean, that's encouraging. And the Macy's conversions that are happening into alternative uses and mixed uses, I like that. I mean, I love to see
I do too.
Something like that emerging and creative solutions and mixed-use solutions to big dinosaur retail space.
Right. I think the day of going and walking around the mall all day, I think that's just kind of gone by the wayside. We just don't do that anymore. Any
So,
other long-term effects that you've seen from COVID in the retail sector?
well, COVID obviously came crashing in on a lot of entertainment uses. So when we talk about movie theaters, or one of my clients owns an entertainment center with bowling and food and
Sure.
beverage, they shut them down. So the government absolutely shut them down. But when they opened their doors, it was like the Roaring '20s. I mean, the pent-up demand shot their numbers to record levels. It is like when you take something away from people, they don't like it. So when you give it back, they're all about it. And it's pizzas and bowling and having fun. The pandemic caused some pain in the short term for many classes in retail, which is restaurants and regular shopping retail, fashion, entertainment. But the backside of it was positive. And then the foundational element that's critical to know or mention is these guys were already working hard in e-commerce. So they were fighting Amazon before the pandemic. They were looking for e-commerce solutions, convenient solutions for their brand, connecting with customers. I think of Tommy Bahama. I think I bought one thing, and now I could never stop them from contacting me through emails or text in a variety of ways. So
they're always listening.
The good news, I think, is that retail was already pivoting to Amazon. And then when the pandemic hit, they already had a foundation of technology and experience to then work with to survive, and then come back on the backside and thrive when people came back into the stores. Does that make sense, or is that too much?
That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So would you say the overall retail market outlook right now is positive, or what sectors of the retail market look positive?
Surprisingly, it's positive. I myself thought it would be more negative, but surprisingly, it's positive. Even with prices being up, like at the grocery store and gas, people still seem to have disposable income enough to rise retail sales ahead. Not at a huge amount. It's moderate, and I think the real estate for the most part is busy and thriving. There's new stuff coming in. Health and fitness seems to be a big theme ahead. And there's a variety of franchises and market players that are consuming space in that category of health and fitness. Okay. And that's what the published reports talk about. I've seen some of that. In my market, I already have a ton of that stuff. So I haven't seen anything really new. And then again, the food and beverage and the quick service restaurants, that seems to be a very hot category. I'm just looking for the bigger stuff. Like maybe that's what's dead, right? Like new, bigger stuff. Seems like that can't compete.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of new big box construction lately.
Yeah, that may be done. Like the drugstore category, that's done. Right. With Walgreens and CVS, you can't penetrate that. And maybe the building supply category, again, that's done with Home Depot and Lowe's. And some of these categories, maybe that's what it's about is just it's not feasible to enter. Sure. But there seems to me there may be something fragile about that, but I could be wrong. The reality is I'm an appraiser, so I'm always leaning a little pessimistically.
We do.
on some of this stuff, right? But all the numbers and all the reports, they're pretty much saying good things.
That's good to know.
I guess it's good to say after the pandemic, right? Like we thought the world could be ending.
Sure.
And now it's very normalized and things are going along pretty well with retail. There's nothing really dramatic to report.
We've changed, but not massively.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Consumer preferences have definitely changed. But I think our retailers have really pivoted to accommodate.
I think you're exactly right, and that's what you're feeling, right?
That's what I see.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
All right. Well, as always, we appreciate your time and your input, Rich. Your opinions on the retail sector are always valued as we move through our 4-part series highlighting changes from the commercial side of the appraisal profession. I'm Julie Mollendorp-Floyd, and as always, it's been a pleasure to have you as our guest. Remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform. Your support is highly appreciated, and thank you for stopping by. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Beyond the Numbers. If you'd like to stay at the forefront of appraisal news, boost your career, or just learn more about the profession, be sure to subscribe to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for stopping by.